So Jennifer, for anyone who's not familiar with you, I'm gonna introduce you really quickly. So Jennifer is a mixed media artist who works in several mediums, including watercolor, encaustic, charcoal, and laser, and charcoal transfers, as well as digital art. Jennifer O'Neill Pickering has been exploring the medium of encaustics, including charcoal and laser transfers, for words and images. For 6 months, she kept an urban journal of the natural environment in her neighborhood, which has inspired her to depict crows in her artwork. Which I think has put in my mind that piece of yours in the Sacrament Studio show. You have this small crow piece that's in the exhibition this year, correct?
Yes. And I have others that I was going to share actually because they're so small. But I thought so I've started to also use words with my pieces. So this one is Pose Crows. And basically I do a lot of, I use a lot of patterns based on my drawings, and they're either based on charcoal and then I use patterns. This one is basically, this was an original charcoal that became a laser print. And so this is a laser transfer with words. And I kind of went crazy with crows last year. This is another one where I was experimenting with words. So this is one I did this year. And it just says, caring fills the heart with love. And my whole idea with crows basically started 4 years ago when a crow across the street had been injured by a hawk. And so all these crows were in the sycamore trees above my neighbor's yard. And they were all like, you know, in distress. And I saw the crow and I was going to go help the crow. It took me a while to get a box and all that. And they stayed with that crow. They tried to encourage it to fly away, but it was really too injured. So they waited until it had passed over, basically, it died. And then they all started leaving kind of reluctantly. And I went over, I didn't know it was dead, but they left. But it was dead when I got there. And so I buried it in the yard, and I just started reading about crows and just kind of observing other animals in the neighborhood. As I said, I kept a journal, which, and just observing animals. I live in Tahoe Park, so I didn't know the screen would be quite so small. So this is a hawk actually that was I belong to a community garden. This is a Cooper's hawk. So I did a study, and then I would just write my observations in this little journal. These were, of course, these are just very basic studies that I use to develop later in my art. This is a black phoebe, which is a bird that lives, they were nested in a neighbor's porch under the roof. And so I'm inspired by nature. So this was a squirrel. I have squirrels, and this one was eating all my cyclamen, but I feed them walnuts now, so hopefully they won't eat my cyclamen this year. So, and then, you know, I couldn't believe it. I hope, you know, I don't know if I'll do a book. This is just like another study of a crow. Yeah, I have a larger piece with crows in it, a watercolor. This is like just a little study. You know, this is a crow on the lamp and on 8th Avenue in my neighborhood, which, you know,
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say your journals look so organized.
It's not that organized. Well, I mean, I tried to mark off where the pictures, you know, where my sketches were, but most of it's, you know, because I'm not strictly a visual artist. I'm also a literary artist. So all my journals combine a lot of writing with photo. You know, this is an oak leaf, just a quick,
Yeah.
like a pencil study, but you know, then I would use
Oh, I think.
large painting
Oh, there you
behind
are.
me. Sorry, I got too far away. It's La Diosa del Rio Americana, and it's Americano, and it's the goddess of the American River. So all the flora and fauna in this particular piece are animals and plants that you would find in the lower American River, including the mule deer, the deer, and the salmon, of course, and then the swallowtail that lives on the Dutch pipe vine, which, and there's also quail. So, I mean, so I do studies and make patterns. In this particular piece, this watercolor, everything pretty much is a pattern except for the goddess. And, you know, I use glazing, the techniques of glazing, and wet on wet and then dry point. So in my larger watercolors, I use, as I say, a lot of patterns, but anything that kind of runs through my art, because I have, when I'm doing these encaustics, I'm using patterns as well. And then I created like a card that I sold last year, and it's available. I think it's available on Fine Art America. So under Jennifer O'Neill Pickering. And
So in your journals, are they I'm still like I'm thinking about them in relationship to the process that you're undertaking. So are the journals personal passages that are combined with the sketches, or is it a lot of information and content that you're putting together to inform the work you do?
Well, it basically, the urban journal, that had a lot of just observation of what I was seeing. So it's more scientific, but I also I might start a poem in that journal that I finish later, or just the idea of the animals, maybe doing a more finished piece later. So no, it isn't like, oh, what am I going to do with this piece? Like describing in my mind, what am I going to do with it? It's more about observing what I see at that time, at that moment, and then just reflecting on that. So it's more of a reflective journal, but not describing the steps that I'm going to take to create my art. Is that what you mean?
Well, I always think about people's, like, your process in terms of not necessarily something that's very literal, like that you would be using the journal to describe how you're going to make something, but more just how artists collect inspiration, what informs what they're doing. I mean, I have some colleagues who complete a journal every couple months that are very dense content wise. You know, it's like they'll include, you know, snippets of articles they've read that made them think about something, or sketches, or writing. And, you know, a lot of times these journals will reach a place where they can't close themselves anymore, you know, because they've just packed so many different things into it. And they become this sort of treasure box of content that they can draw from anytime they go into the studio. And so it just makes me wonder how you are organizing your process.
Oh, well, that's a good question. I mean, basically, I just, I don't think that's really my process. I mean, I might write, I would do some research on like the animals and things, so figure out what are they doing, why are they doing what they're doing, and just even to identify them. So that's just more scientific. And I might read an article, but I don't necessarily write down my source. I don't like put pictures and like photographs and that kind of thing. It's mostly a personal journal about what I observe and what I'm feeling, um, and it does translate into my art, but it isn't so conscious as someone, maybe these other artists that you're talking about. I'm not consciously writing and doing these things to help me with my art journey. Although, I mean, it obviously seeps into,
Right.
I see it as kind of like a way of exploring thoughts, feelings, my writing, and some of my visuals. And then later, you know, maybe refining some of those images and those thoughts into my work. I don't, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think I just, everybody has these different ways that they're, um, for lack of a better way of putting it, it's almost like how you're keeping the food warm until dinner time or something, It's like you have all these different things you're kind of coalescing and putting together, and I think that, it's for some people it's more literal and others it's not, but I think we have all these different ways that we're informing our process so that it's all weaving itself into the work that we create. And I think for you, because you're talking so much about nature and documentation and the ways that you're weaving this dense content into things like the watercolor behind you, it just makes me wonder how, like your journals and these sorts of things inform all those different ways of working.
Well, a lot of my, to be honest, a lot of my journaling is my writing. And when I'm not creating art, I generally do writing. And honestly, since this COVID, since the shutdown, I haven't I I haven't produced quite as much art as I normally would, and I have kind of gone in this other direction. I have a book coming out. It's called Fruit Box Castles: Poems from a Peach Rancher's Daughter, and it's available from Finishing Line Press. It'll actually be, you can pre-order it there. And I took a photograph of the cover. I kind of designed the cover myself. And this is going off, but kind of off the what you're asking me, but I kind of do both. And so I jump between both. And I've just been really doing more writing lately.
Why do you think that is? Like, do you think it's, you know, be-
I don't know. Sometimes writing, honestly, I have arthritis pretty bad, and that's one thing. And it's just easier for me to write, and I've just been called to do that. So I've written several stories in the last, since COVID. And I think too, also, I'm not really connecting with other artists like I am with writers. And I do feel somewhat isolated. And I thought about trying to, organize an artist group where we could meet once a month on Zoom. Now, one thing I have done is I created a website it's on the Poetry Center, Sacramento Poetry's site, but it's on my site, but it's linked to their site, and it's a gallery. So I created a virtual gallery, and the last show that I organized was, we had to cancel it in person, and it was it's called the Sable and Quill, and it's writers that are also visual artists. But I did post that on, it's called the Poets. So all the artists have representation on that site. That it's just kind of archived, and now there's a new artist. So I'm curating a gallery that kind of connected me somewhat, but not like my writing group where I meet weekly. Right. So well, I don't know.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure. I think that might be something, I need to look into. So that, because, it's such you have to work by yourself when you're you know, an artist or even a writer. So yeah, and that may be part of it. Maybe just because I have a group that I connect with on a weekly basis, to be honest. But also sometimes when I don't feel so well physically, it's easier for me to write, mainly because there's just not as much physical energy that I have to put into that.
And I think, unfortunately, we have to wrap up.
Geez.
I know the time goes by so fast in these interviews, but you have a directory page on the Sock Open Studios website, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So people can find more information about the work that you're doing
They
links.
can also go to she paintsandwrites.com, or that's one of my websites. And you know, people could I think, yeah, my email is on everything's on that directory site, so you could go there if you want to know more. Because I yeah, everything's there.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. I really enjoyed this conversation and understanding more about, you know, how you're adapting to COVID. It's been so different for everyone. And yeah, I looked forward to talking to you today. So
So much.
yeah, thank you.